everybody, my name is Erin Durant and I am a 4-H and Family and Consumer Science Extension Agent with Colorado State University Extension in Gunnison County. And today I'll be showing you how to make green beans with lemon and garlic. For this recipe, you'll need 1 tablespoon of olive oil. You'll need 2 cloves of garlic minced. I went ahead and minced up 2 fresh cloves of garlic, but if you're short on time, you could always use about 2 teaspoons of the pre-minced garlic that you can buy in a jar at the grocery store. You'll need a pound of green beans. Today I'll be using fresh, but again, if you're short on time, you could always use a pound of frozen green beans. Those will work just as well for this recipe. You'll need 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. If you're not a huge fan of lemon juice, you could always leave that out and season this recipe with fresh herbs instead. You may try basil, dill, or thyme. You'll need 1/8 of a teaspoon salt and black pepper to taste. The first step with any recipe is always to wash your hands and wash your fresh produce. Once you've done that, you'll need to trim the ends off of your green beans. If you're using frozen green beans, you can skip this step because they've already been trimmed, but if you're using fresh green beans, you'll need to trim the stem end off of each bean before you begin cooking them. So you'll notice that with each green bean, there is a stem end, which is where the bean actually attached to the plant, and then there's a tail end. You'll need to trim off the stem end, but the tail end you can leave on. That part is edible. So just go through your pound of green beans and trim off the stem end of each bean. A lot of people find this kind of a pain in the butt because it can be just a little bit time consuming, but I actually find it kind of relaxing. So just take your time and go through the whole pound. It's really a pretty quick process once you get going. But if you find that you just can't tolerate this step, again, you can always use the frozen beans. Some people like to trim off both ends, both the tail and the stem. That really isn't necessary, but if you just don't like to eat that tail end, you can do that too. Some people also like to snap their beans in half so that the pieces are a little bit smaller. You can do that as well if you prefer, or you can just leave them whole. That's the faster process, just to pinch off that end and leave them whole. Just got some little ones left in the bottom here. And that's it, we're done. So it's a pretty quick process to trim just 1 pound of green beans. Once you've trimmed your green beans, you can then begin the cooking process. You'll want to use a skillet with a lid since we'll be covering the green beans to cook them later. So first go ahead and heat up your skillet on about medium heat. Again, every stove is different, so you might need to adjust your heat accordingly. You'll then add your 1 tablespoon of olive oil to the skillet. And then we're going to saute some garlic. Garlic is really nice to use in recipes since it adds a lot of flavor and eliminates the need to use quite as much salt, but it does burn really quickly. So we're only going to saute our garlic for about 30 seconds and we're going to keep a close eye on it to make sure it doesn't burn. So once that oil is hot, go ahead and add your garlic. And we're going to cook it about 30 seconds until it is fragrant. Make sure it's in the oil and spread in an even single layer in your pan. It already smells so good. Keep a close eye on it, kind of stir it around occasionally to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom. And after about 30 seconds, it should start to become nice and fragrant. You don't want it to start to burn, so again, make sure you're watching it. And once it starts to smell nice and fragrant, you can go ahead and add your green beans. Ideally, your skillet is big enough to where your green beans are in just kind of a nice thin layer in the bottom of the skillet, not piled up too high. Just going to stir them around You want to coat them with that olive oil and garlic that are in the bottom of your pan so that they don't stick and it makes that nice flavor from the garlic. Alright. Once you stir them around and they're coated with that oil, you're then going to cover your pan. And you're going to steam your beans for about 5 to 8 minutes or until they're just tender and bright green. As your beans cook, you'll want to occasionally take the lid off and stir them around and check on them, just to make sure nothing's burning and everything is cooking nicely. I'm not using a non-stick skillet, so one thing that I like to do sometimes is add just a little bit of water to the bottom of my pan. That just helps things to steam a little bit more evenly and prevents any sticking or burning to the bottom. But if you're using a non-stick skillet, you may not need to do that, and the oil is likely enough to keep things from sticking or burning in your skillet. Once your beans are tender and green and you think they're done, you can go ahead and turn the heat off on your stove. Take the lid off of your skillet, stir those beans around, and at this point we can add our salt and lemon juice. So because we use that garlic for flavor, we really don't need much salt in this recipe. So we're just going to measure out about 1/8 of a tablespoon, or 1/8 of a teaspoon, and sprinkle that on top. We're going to sprinkle a little bit of black pepper just to taste. I really like black pepper, so I'm going to add a lot, but you might not love it, so just add as much as you prefer. And then we're going to pour our lemon juice over the top as well. Alright, we're going to stir it all around. Remember, if you don't like that lemon juice, you can add extra flavor using fresh herbs like basil, dill, or thyme. So we're just going to mix it all together until all of the flavors are evenly distributed over the beans. Once you've mixed in your salt, pepper, and lemon juice, your green beans are ready to be eaten. This recipe makes about 6 servings, so you can go ahead and divide up your green beans into about 6 equal portions and enjoy.